I can tell you a lot about Lawrence and about everything he does professionally, and it would be really impressive. I think what would be even more impressive is the fact that Lawrence reached out to me and said he wanted to speak here. I don't know whom of you met Mike Thomas. He spoke here a couple months ago, but I think he spoke with the other class. And he's the senior executive in charge of production for Turner Studios. And then we joke that that's a made-up title. Well, Lawrence is Mike's boss. And I sent Lawrence a message just telling him what a great job Mike did. And Lawrence's response to me was, I want to do that. Can I come speak to them? So I can tell you everything he's done. He has an amazing history, a work history for you, and he's got amazing lessons. And he's pretty much in charge of Turner Studios. I don't know your exact, I do know your exact title, but.
It's all the business, operational, project stuff that happens. All this, there's two different things about, that's why I call it show business. There's show and the business. And so I do a lot of the business part of the show.
So Lawrence does the business and has so much to teach you. What's most impressive to me about Lawrence is his heart. Because again, he said to me, can I do this? And it turns out he does this at Georgia State. And he was so excited. No.
Georgia.
At Georgia. Okay. Oh, I thought, but there's something downtown Georgia.
Nope.
Oh, you go to Athens.
I go to Athens.
Oh, I didn't realize that. I'm sorry. So
No.
you go all the way to Athens to do this because you went to Georgia.
Yes.
Yes. So to me, that shows much more than his professional acumen is his heart, that he wants to be here. And I am delighted to be able to introduce you to Lawrence Toner.
Thanks. So to kind of follow up on what Liz was saying, I do this for the other Grady School. So the other Grady School is the Grady School of Journalism at the University of Georgia. So that's where I went. And, you know, I just go to the students. And I was just telling Liz, this is kind of weird because this is the first time I've been in high school since high school. I don't think I've ever been in the high school since then. So it was kind of like we got crunch there between classes. You guys have to do that every day? Yeah. I mean, that's nuts. That's like, anyway, so I speak to the students at the journalism school there, and I just talk about, you know, what you guys need to do, because everybody's always so focused on what do I need to do to get a job, to get into the business, and, you know, how did you do what you did? And when I was at Georgia, the big thing that I always was curious about was they'd bring people in, guest speakers, and you'd go, well, you know, my biggest thing was like, how did you get to where you are now? I mean, it seems like, is it real hard to do? Is it easy to do? So when I got into the business and years have passed, I started thinking, well, I need to go back and talk to the kids because I think it's valuable and they seem to enjoy it. And it's a win-win. I ended up hiring 3 people that I had guest lectured to over the course of several years. And, you know, a lot of people come to me and say, well, you know, it's got to be really hard to get into TV and it's got to be really hard to get up through the business and everything. And it is, but it's amazing how few people actually do the simplest thing, which is after the end of the class, I would have of like 50 or 60 people, you know, 3 times the size of this class, and I would sit there and go, here's my business card, here's my number, you know, give me a call, I'm willing to talk to you. And of 60 people, maybe 2 people at the end of the class would come up to me. I don't know if it was just they were worried or scared or bashful, I don't know. But usually, of those people that came up to me, they ended up giving me a phone call, coming down to the Turner, ended up getting an internship, ended up getting a job. So, you know, it can be difficult, but it's not impossible. And it's certainly not, it's really just making that connection. I was pretty lucky in high school. I took a photography class. in high school, and I was like, wow, this is pretty cool. I want to do this. I want to take pictures. And so I did that for a couple years. Luckily, my high school had video production back when video production wasn't really offered in high school. I don't know if it's offered here. Is it offered as a class? So I took a couple years of that and realized I liked the photography stuff, but I really liked the video stuff more. So I kind of had a good idea what I wanted to do coming out of high school, which I know a lot of people in your seniors, I don't know, is juniors, seniors, are you guys all seniors? Mostly seniors? I mean, a lot of people don't know what they want to do. They're like, I don't know, I'll go to college maybe, I don't know. I kind of had an idea, so I was a little lucky in that way, and I went to college in South Carolina for a couple of years in a small little school called Winthrop College. It was, it had been an all-girls school, and it went co-ed like 2 years before I went there, so that was kind of nice. It was basically 3-to-1 girls to guys, so that was, and it was a great school. It was like something out of a Disney movie. It was like old buildings, ivy-covered walls, it was like 3,000 students. It was real small, but you know, it didn't really have a lot of, the cameras and the equipment they had for television production were like from the 50s, because it was a small school. So I decided I needed to move on. I was doing really good in school, and I was, you know, it was like, but I'm not really trying that hard, so I gotta find something else. I ended up at Georgia. Georgia's got a great journalism school, and the television production is great, and I took my minored in drama, so I got a lot of the lighting and set design and makeup and all that kind of stuff. And did that, got out of Georgia and ended up at a station in Savannah, WSAV. And as a lot of my friends in school were like, oh, you gotta go to Turner, you gotta go to New York, you gotta go to LA. I was kind of intimidated by LA and New York, frankly. And I thought, well, I've always heard that working for a small station, you get to learn a lot, touch a lot, do stuff, which was true. So spent 6 years there, worked my way up the totem pole at WSAV, and ended up with a company here in Atlanta called FATS. And FATS stands for Firearms Training Systems. So basically what it was this company that creates video simulations about as big as this whole wall, and for the military and cops. And basically we would shoot the videos of these scenarios, and basically, you know, the cop would sit there and they'd turn the video on, and they're in like this dark room, and it's this full-size simulation of like a bad guy who walks up, and the cop pulls a gun and it has like a laser in it, and you basically try to talk the guy out of shooting you or running away or doing whatever. And so we would shoot all these different versions of it, and you shoot at the screen and different things happen. And so that was kind of cool, but it was a different experience than the TV station. Very military, gung-ho types worked there, and it was kind of a culture shock for me. I ended up then moving over to a company that is what they call a production company here in town. There are lots of them, and they do this part of the job, which is shooting the videos, and then they do the editing and post-production side of the job. And there are a dozen of them in town. So I worked for them for about 6 years, and through that company, made relationships with people in town, and knew somebody over at Turner. I was always looking to move on. And this opportunity came up in 2000. So it was 11 years ago. And it's not the job I have now. So I took a job as the director of project services, which is basically, we have producers on staff who, if you were a client and came to me and said, hey, I got this like promo we got to run for the Cartoon Network next week, and I've got $30,000, and I got a script, but I need it on the air as soon as possible. You would come to me, and then we would put a budget together, get the people that needed to be on the job together, and produce it for you. And basically that's what my group does. So I kind of work myself up the ranks, and ended up running the group. So that's what I do now. And so I don't know if some of you met Mike Thomas. Mike works in the group. He's the executive in charge of production for our originals group. And Turner Studios basically executes the work. So a lot of our clients are all the network producers, TNT, TBS, Cartoon. They come to us and say, here's a script, just do it for us. So we don't write the scripts. We don't come up with the ideas. But Mike's group is the one group within Turner Studios who actually does come up with ideas and what they call creative. I guess I wanted to talk to you guys about, you're trying to figure out what you want to do and where you're going to go. And I think a real important thing to think about is, I find book sense is great to have. You've got to have the book sense. But if you got any bit of common sense, use it. Because common sense is the most valuable tool you're going to be able to have once you leave Grady. Using common sense and building relationships with people is really what it's all about. And it's just kind of connecting and making those connections with people, and you'll find what you need. A lot of times you'll think, God, it's going to be so hard to get to that place, or, this guy had a friend, or he knew this person, or he was lucky, or whatever. And in many cases, that is true. But, unless you're out there trying and you're connecting with people and making relationships, you're not going to get what you want. So I found that some of the most simple connections that people make at my level, at people that work for me on their level, are the most valuable, the ones that make a big difference. Some people think, I got to have a resume that is killer and blows people away, or I've got to have 17 degrees, and that's sometimes those are very important depending on what kind of job you're going after or what you want to do in life. But so much of it just depends on the simple drive of just being able to make a connection with somebody, make a friend, build relationships. Television production, TV is great. It seems real glamorous, and when you first get into this business, first 6 weeks of being in TV, you're like, man, this is great. And it is, it's fun. But then the glamour wears off, and it's like any job. And so you have to, the motivation to do anything really has to come from a real desire to have fun at what you're doing. Because if you're not having fun at what you're going to do, there's no point in doing it, at least in my book. If you think you have to do it, well, I don't know. You're not going to be happy with whatever job you took. You got to try to find something that you really are interested in. And, and that could change too. When I got into this business, I wanted to be, a videographer. I basically wanted to be a director of photography, because that was what really kind of got me into it in the first place. But, as the fate had it, I kind of managed people a lot. People saw that I could do that well, and, people kind of pushed me into that arena. So I ended up, and I'm kind of glad I did, because I'm an old guy now, and I couldn't do that anymore. We got guys that are my age and older doing that, and they're walking around like this. Especially since luckily the technology's gotten better. That camera is about a third of the size of what they used to be when I was doing it. But it's just, I kind of rode the wave and just kind of took the opportunities as they came. Found advocates. We were talking about this earlier. Yep. It's really important to find somebody, whoever that person may be, that's a real advocate in whatever you're doing. And it could be a mentor also, and that person could play both roles. But somebody who, when I say advocate, somebody out there who's interested in your success. And it's not because you just walked up and said, hey, could you be interested in my success? It's because you created a relationship with them, and now they're really there trying to help you out. that makes a big difference. And I've luckily had that a couple times, but it can happen and then can not happen as you go through your life. So, it's just something out there to be thinking about, because it's very important. Most people can't do it all by themselves. I mean, you gotta, like I said earlier, make those connections, try to build relationships with people once you get out there in the world. And now, like you're in the world. Just because you're Grady, you're in the world now. So anything you can do to find somebody that you could say, hey man, they could probably help me out, figure something out, move on to the next level, I should try to make friends with them, hook up with them, make a connection. That really is helpful. I never wanted to be in front of the cameras. I was always wanted to be behind the cameras. There's a lot of people who want to be in front of the cameras. And when I went to Georgia, there's a lot of classes in they call it the J School, for people who want to be journalists and on-air personalities. And it was just never my cup of tea.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
You said you rode the wave.
Mm-hmm.
So you rode the wave. Basically, like, took when the opportunity came, you took it.
Yep.
I get the sense that was like easy.
It, remember when I was talking about common sense? If you can use some common sense and see when the opportunities are there and weigh what you want to do, then yeah, it can be easy. At one point in my career, I really hated where I was. I was just like, this sucks. This job I have is frustrating, and I don't get paid enough, and I've been doing this for 15 or 10 years.
So was that because of the pay, or was it because you didn't think
It was everything. It was the pay. I felt like I was working so hard. I felt like I was working as an owner of the company, and I didn't have any personal, I didn't have any equity stake in the company. And so there were opportunities where I could have just quit. I could have just given up, or I could have just tried to, go for another job without really thinking it through and just being real emotional about it and just going, I've had it. I'm out of here. And believe me, I felt that. But I realized, deep down, I was like, I got to be smart about this, because I don't want to. I've gotten to this point. I don't want to go back, 3 steps back. So, what do? Well, you just have to be patient. And so you just weigh the opportunities that come up, and finally one did, where I realized this was the opportunity I needed to jump on. And that helped. Go ahead. Oh, she's got a question real quick. Well, at Georgia, and it's still sort of this way, the journalism school is, it's very journalism focused. So there's a lot, there's different concentrations. There's one in advertising, there's one for public relations, there's one for like pure journalism, like writing and being a reporter type person, and then there's one for like production, TV production. Well, the TV production side at Georgia is very focused on, electronic field production, like sort of, getting out there and covering news and run and gun kind of stuff. So there's a lot of focus on editing and getting kind of producing a story visually, but there's not a lot of focus on all the other aspects of television or film production, like lighting, set design, costume, makeup, all that kind of thing. The drama school has that. So I felt like a minor in drama, get all that in, while I'm doing all the pure television production stuff. And that helped a lot. And there's a lot of, Georgia's really kind of, I ended up being more in television. I worked in news for a little while when I was in Savannah. I'm not a news person. It's really, news is for news junkies. It's like, adrenaline rush. You got to be, there's no holidays. You're working weekends. You're working nights. Like if you can go, you guys, any of you could go and get a job with CNN tomorrow. Seriously. I mean, it wouldn't be that easy, but they have these positions called VJs, and they're the entry-level position at CNN. And you go down there and you basically work the third shift. So you go and you start at 2 o'clock in the morning, and you basically used to load tapes. They don't have tapes anymore. It's all like on a server. But you basically manipulate and get all the stories into the server, and you're just, that's how you get into CNN. And if you're patient, and you'll work your way up the ranks year after year. But it's news, and I never was into news. Schools like SCAD, Savannah College of Art and Design, they're now here in Atlanta. Georgia State, to a certain extent, they definitely focus more on television production, video production, and less on the news side of things. But they're all great schools, and there's a lot of people that get into the business that don't go to college. Well, in TV, ideas are king. I mean, content is king. So, if you've got a good idea and you can kind of pollinate that idea, make it grow, and so it's a story, or it's bigger than just one little nugget of an idea, and you can kind of make it bigger, then you're on the right track. Because people in the industry pay a lot of money for good ideas. I mean, that's why there are great shows on TV. And then there are not so great shows on TV, because there's some bad ideas too. But I think, I don't know, do you want to go to college?
Yes.
You do? Okay. Well, that's the first step. Go to school. Definitely take this business. If you want to get into the idea creation business in television, you need to learn how to write well. So get into writing. That would help. And then, just practice with ideas. And, and try to get into the business any way you can. Working at a TV station, I've known people that started working at the public access, People TV here in town is a place, which is real easy because they'll let, part of their deal is you're there to create TV because they're there to let you do that because it's public access. So that's right down on 14th Street, I think it was.
Yeah, 14th Street.
Yeah. And so that's and I think it's, part of it too is it's like selling anything. Why would somebody want to buy your stuff as opposed to somebody else's stuff? You got to find an angle that somebody's going to be interested in you more than someone else. Because at the end of the day, if I have somebody who comes to me and goes, I want to get into TV production, and they got a degree from Georgia State, I'll say, okay, I want to be a producer, or I want to be, but I know I can't start that way, so I'll be a production assistant. That's the entry level job in TV. They call it a PA. Production assistant. So, okay, well, I got 100 people over here that also want to be PAs. What's going to separate you from them? And a couple things do. A real drive to want that job. And you got to show me why there's a big reason why you want that job. Another one is personality. I don't care what business you're in. I don't care if you want to be the one guy or girl who works the gas station pump, or the guy or the girl who's a rocket scientist. One end of the spectrum to the other. If you don't have a positive personality, a good attitude, and you're friendly, if you don't have those things, you're not going to get anywhere, because nobody wants to deal with people that are not friendly. It just doesn't work, So In my business, it's very rare to have very accomplished directors or producers that are jerks. They are out there, and that used to be kind of a, you know, sort of part of the, you know, the rite of passage in TV. It was like you had to be treated like dirt, and and if you were, you know, if you lived through it, then you would be good in television production. That was the case for years. That's not the case now. And so the case now is a lot of people like working with people that are friendly and they're nice. It's just really, again, it's common sense. And if you can show somebody you got a positive attitude, you're motivated, and you want to get into the business and you're itching to, that motivation will show. I basically have been successful in what I do because I connect with people, and I enjoy helping people out. That's why I'm here. I'm not here because I'm going to get an additional $1,000 in my salary this year. I'm here because I want to help you guys out. And I think at the end of the day, if I can, and Liz and I were talking about this, if I can get one of you to think about just one thing I said today, then I've done my job. You know, and that's kind of how I've been successful. Yeah.
Kind of what he said, like, I don't think trying to say, like, you gotta be a jerk, but it's like you're a boss, you're the boss, and, like, you have people under you have some of your responsibility, you have a big responsibility, so it's hard for you to just be, it's not hard, but you just can't just be nice, you know, your boss kind of have to be kind of stern.
Stern, yeah. There's a difference between being a jerk and being stern. And sometimes, yeah, sometimes you have to have difficult conversations with people when they're not doing what they're supposed to do, or you know they could be doing better. But it's the way you go about it, you know. And it's, and believe me, you know, this is an interesting point that you guys will find, you know, as you get older. Everybody's personality that's in this room right now is basically going to be the same personality 20 years from now. You know, so if there's a bully or a jerk that you guys know of in the school, they're going to be a bully and a jerk 20 years from now. Unless somebody, somewhere, makes a connection with them and turns them in a different direction. But I deal with those people every day. And I'll think of this guy. He's the same guy I knew when I was a junior in high school, and he's a jerk. But, you know, you just manage to work around that. But, you know, it's interesting, but it doesn't have to be. If you lead people positively and you gain their trust and you become credible in their eyes, you know, the job becomes very easy. It really does. And you got to, you know, treat people with respect, and you've got to. My primary job really now is to grow people. I've got 4 direct reports. That's what we call them. And they're all executive producers, and they've all been in the business 15 plus years. And my job is to grow them professionally. And my job isn't to sit there and go, well, you're 15 minutes late. That's not my job. My job is to say, what do you want next? You know, how can I help you move to the next level? And luckily, I've operated, and I keep pushing this idea about common sense. I've operated on common sense since I was here. I mean, it's always helped me. And it really helped me make the decision to say something or not say something, to choose something or not choose something. It really helped. And it still helps.
Sandra, you have another question?
If you have like a person that is I know you said you wanted people pointing you in the direction of being.
Yeah, I did. I had a mentor in college, was one of my college professors, who was great, and I connected with that person really well, and he pushed me to really push myself. And I've been really lucky in that way where I've never worked for somebody who was a real, SOB. I've never been in that position, luckily. I've had people that were weird, that were often, la la land. I've had eccentric people I've worked for. Television attracts a lot of weird people. I'm one of them. But I've never had somebody who was really just foul. But I have, my college professor was one, and then I worked, the person that I was hired to work for at Turner, I worked for her for 5 years. She was a real mentor and advocate. So
If people that was in your life that if they never would push you in this direction, you think you would have been a videographer?
maybe, yeah. It's hard to say. When I think why I'm in management, managing people, is because when I was in school, for some reason, not everybody, but my friends would always come to me for advice. And I think that was kind of the early beginnings of managing people and leading people, because people came to me for advice. Hey, what should I do about my boyfriend? And and it was just something I just was very comfortable with doing. And that's kind of how I ended up in this spot.
How do you like management?
Management is great. It's very fulfilling, to be able to see people grow and watch them move up the ranks and get the accolades they deserve. That's very cool. I like that. Working for a big company sometimes can be very frustrating, because I went from one end of the spectrum to the other. I worked for this production company. There were 12 of us. It's a small company, small business. Now I work for a company that's got like 10,000 people, and there's a lot of processes and a lot of bureaucracy. And I recently was talking to this woman. We have this whole system of expenses. When you take a client out for dinner or whatever, and they give us like a company. We have a company Amex, so I have to use that. So you have a whole system to get your money back, or to get it paid. So I submitted the thing, and to make a long story short, I was like, the woman rejected my expense report. And so I saw the email, and I tried to contact her. I got on the phone with her, or got on the phone with somebody that she worked with, and she goes, "Oh, well, she has a no-call policy." I was like, a no-call policy? What is that? It's like, she works for the same company, doesn't she? Yes, but she doesn't take calls. And I was like, I can't believe this. Those are the times where you're like, you want to kind of pull your hair out, because it can be at times bureaucratic. You got to take a deep breath and focus on why you're there, and try to not let that get in the way.
Did you get it approved?
Yeah, I finally got it approved. It was bad.
It's amazing that her boss lets her have her no-call
I
policy.
know.
What do they say when her boss calls?
And then it was like, well, their policy was so screwed up that they couldn't even answer the question. So they were like, oh, well, she's going to have to call her supervisor. Well, I'm thinking, well, I thought she was like, this person was so high up on the totem pole she didn't take calls. I was like, anyway.
Have you ever stumbled or made a mistake?
No.
I didn't think so. That's why I asked, because I didn't think you had.
I have made, I've made lots of mistakes. Luckily, they've all been pretty minor. They haven't been massively, life-changing from a professional standpoint. I've made a lot of mistakes personally, But from a professional standpoint, I've been pretty
Tell
good.
us about the personal.
I know. I've been pretty good on the professional side. I'm a really passionate person, so I tend to wear my emotions on my sleeve, and that sometimes is not a good thing in a professional environment because you need to be able to kind of not master your emotions, but just focus them in the right direction. And I tend to be passionate when I see things that are done wrong or could be done better. I tend to want to speak up. I've never wanted to just be the yes man for some process or something that doesn't make any sense. Sometimes that has led to challenges, but nothing too bad.
How do you get past it? If something does lead to a challenge, how do you kind of pick up, dust off, and move forward?
Well, you try, that's hard. It is. I think a big thing too in business, any job you take, whatever you do, you got to realize, or this is very hard to do. I mean, I'm an old guy and I'm still working on this. And
I'm older than he is, so I'm kind of, feeling old with this.
But every day, and this is both personally and professionally, don't take things personally. And that's really hard to do. When somebody comes up to you and says something that's mean or, it hurts your feelings, don't take it personally. I mean, it's extremely hard, but it's just not worth it. Because what you end up doing is spending all this emotional energy on what that person said. And that person doesn't know you at all, really. So you really shouldn't be taking it personally. And that can be a real obstacle in the workplace. It can be a real obstacle in your personal life too, but it can be a real obstacle because a lot of people hold grudges and then they form attitudes about, well, this guy's a jerk and I don't want to talk to him. And I mean, you guys think it's bad here sometimes? It's exactly the same out there. It's just older. It's just everybody's a little older. It can be.
How do you not take it personally? What do you do to not take it personally? What can we teach them about that?
Well, I used to take things personally, and because a big thing of mine was I used to be like, well, I'm on this whole fair, I'm going to try to be as fair as I can to everybody. Because being fair is the right thing to do. It's just the right thing to do. And it is the right thing to do. Being fair is the right thing to do. But life ain't fair. And if you constantly think that you're going to try to make things fair out of life being not fair, you're going to pull your hair out. And that's one thing I've tried to focus on instead of when trying not to take things personally is it's just, some people are going to react in certain ways to who I am, and I have no control over them. And so I shouldn't get all upset about it and move on. Just move forward. Very difficult to do.
Do you guys ever take things personally? What are some of the things? What are some stories? Okay, Jonathan?
Like, during hairspray,
He played seaweed.
never kissed.
What's that?
I said me and Penny never kissed. We were supposed to kiss like 3 times, but we never did. It's just the fact that it wasn't personal. It's just no. I'm sorry. I know I'm supposed to, but
So what happened? Who took it personally? You did, or Penny did, or?
yeah, just I guess I took it a little bit more personal with that though. I was like, what, she has a point. At first I was like, oh, okay, is it because I'm like ugly or something? I thought about it. I was like, that's kind of
What else?
People say criticism
Yeah.
No one likes this.
I know sometimes I have to do it at church because I'm the leader of the praise team and have to, like, as their leader, I have to give them constructional criticism, but sometimes take it kind of personal. But I know them, like, personally, like, I know their personality, I know how to work, so I'm like, let me take it personal. But I know how to handle the situation differently. Like, I'm still the type of person that still kind of work on, like, I try not to hurt anybody's feelings. Like, you worry about that, especially if you know that person.
Yeah, it's tough. And, it can be, like I said, a real obstacle in getting through, and moving up the ladder or just being successful in your job. And it can be tough.
So earlier on, you were talking about how you've gone to Georgia,
Yep.
not Georgia State, Georgia.
Georgia, University of Georgia.
Because they have good music in Athens. That's really why you
Yes.
go, right? You like to
I love Athens. Athens is a great town.
So one of the things you said, and you had told me this before when we met the first time, that you kind of laid out there, people want to contact you, they can. And you've hired people who've contacted you. What can you tell this class about that, about how it happened? How'd they get through to you, and what'd you see that made you hire them?
Well, I think that, the folks that, it was just real simple. I mean, it's actually pretty simple. There's no real magic to it. It's basically just being motivated enough to take the step to walk up to somebody and say, hey, I'm really interested in doing this, and I'm wondering what do I need to do it? Do I need to call somebody, or do I call you? And really, that was it. And what impressed me is the fact that those folks, they're not, I wouldn't say they were fearless, but they kind of got outside their comfort zone, because, excuse me, I'm nervous standing up here. This is outside my comfort zone. I don't get up and talk to classes every day or anything. I'm nervous when I stand up in front of other colleagues and staff. I have to talk about stuff. I took public speaking in college, and I was nervous. I mean, but it's just kind of getting out of your comfort zone shows people, wow, they're interested and motivated. And because there's a lot of people that might be interested and motivated, but they never show it. So I don't have the ability to read minds, unfortunately. So it's just kind of like you don't know until someone comes and makes that connection with you.
So they need to reach out to you.
Reaching out is, yeah.
Even if they have the best resume in the world, if they don't reach out to you, you'll
Yeah.
never see the resume.
Exactly. And I keep going back to that common sense thing. I've worked with a lot of people who were just rocket science smart, but they were just dumb as logs when it came to like human relationships and how to deal with people, and some were successful and some were not. But the vast majority of people who have used their common sense and that human relationship connection, establishing friendships and everything, they could be dumb as logs, but they've always been successful. They've used that to their advantage, and it really has helped them. And, so you got to have the foundation. I always, because a lot of people say, oh, well, that means I don't have to go to school or college or anything. That's great. I just, use my personality and I'll just get everything. No, that's not quite the case. You got to have the foundation. But don't forget, the common sense portion too.
Excuse me. One of the things that Lawrence told me before we came in today was that he had an advocate at work, and he talked a little bit about advocates today. Can you tell us more about your advocate and what does that word mean to you or to people in here? What's the role of that person in your life and their lives?
Well, like at any place you work or we'll take the workforce. You could be really good, smart, successful, but if you're in a big organization and you're one of many, many, many people that you want to impress, you might not have the opportunity to, or just based on whatever you're doing, they don't see all the gifts that you can bring to the table because they don't have a connection with you or they don't work with you. Having an advocate is a great way of having that person basically be your spokesman almost, and kind of letting the rest of the organization know how good you are. It really is helpful because, without that connection, without that somebody there to kind of help you along, a lot of times it can be real frustrating because you think you're doing really good, you think you're doing your job really well, and you probably are, but you just don't have somebody out there being your cheerleader. And if you can ever get that situation, man, it's very valuable. I've had it. I don't really have that now. My boss is a great guy, and I'm constantly looking at ways to make different connections with people in my organization. But it's difficult when you work in a big place. You're kind of a small fish in a big pond.
Right.
So having an advocate really does help. You had a question?
No.
No
You have a
question?
Oh, you just. Oh, I thought that was a question. So you're gonna have to listen to me asking questions. So you sure you don't have a question? Have to go to my questions then. Did you ever have to meet with someone that before you met with them, you knew you were nervous? Maybe you heard about their reputation or something, but someone that you were a little nervous about meeting with before the meeting?
Oh, yeah. It's difficult. Yeah, it's difficult to. I was always kind of brought up on this, corporate hierarchy, where you act a certain way to certain people, and I still believe there is something to that. You have to be respectful, but I was intimidated by people a lot at higher levels above me, and now I'm not I've gotten older and a little bit wiser, and I'm not as intimidated. Those people are they're people like everybody else, but it can be challenging sometimes. But don't let the respect that you need to show get in the way of connecting with them. Don't be intimidated by them. They started out somewhere too, and worked their way up. So I think you'd be surprised that if you saw, somebody that was high up on the food chain at some company, and you went up to them and said, "Hi, how you doing? I just wanted to introduce myself," and you were nice to them and reached out to them. I think you'd be surprised how much positive response you'd get from that, because people just don't do it enough, and I think that you'd get a positive response from it. Don't be afraid to do it.
Probably lonely at the top where they are.
Yeah.
And so they'd like it.
And unfortunately, fear gets in the way of a lot of opportunity. Well, I don't want to do that because I might look stupid if I ask them the wrong question, or I'm going to get embarrassed, or be fearless. Don't let that get in the way, because that one time you might do that and you thought, well, I shouldn't do it. If you just that one time did it, it might open doors you never thought you'd have been able to open. Yeah.
What are some of are there people you've connected to that you thought maybe you couldn't connect with and you did it anyway? And if so, what were some of those stories?
That's a good question. I have, in the past, tried to like just be that fearless person and kind of, because I'm that way too. I've always been very, I don't know if I should say anything, or he's gonna think I'm just brown nosing if I go up and talk to him or whatever. But in certain situations, I've, found that it's just kind of jumping off the cliff there and being fearless for a second and just connecting with somebody has made a difference, and they were nice and acted and seemed interested in what we were talking about, and the experience was actually very positive. And I had concocted in my head that I was going to say something stupid and the guy was going to, blow me off or whatever, and it was the exact opposite. So it is kind of getting to that place where you're just being a little more fearless than you normally are. And it's like the comfort zone thing. We all live in our own little comfort zone. And it's tough to step out of the comfort zone because, it's scary. It's something you haven't done before. Try it. Well, I think, my dad was definitely a hero. He taught me a lot about using common sense. That's a good question. I've never had really like, well, I think, Dwight Eisenhower was a hero of mine. I mean, it's more personal connections, that I had were heroes. A couple people that I worked with that I thought were great.
Did you ever see yourself like being, I don't want to say manager or whatever, but did you ever see yourself being where you are now?
No. No, I didn't know. Like I said, I kind of had an idea what I wanted to do, but I didn't know if I'd ever get to that place. And yeah, there were times where I felt that way. Like I don't know how could I do that? So yeah, and if you asked me even 10 years ago, would I be doing this? I'd be like, no. I'd have no idea. I mean, that's the great thing about life. It's unexpected. You try to like go in a certain direction and see what happens.
So we have to leave today a little earlier than usual, and we're about getting ready to go. First of all, Lawrence, thank you so
No, thank you guys.
much. Okay,
Thank you
thank
guys.
you